What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Use the hashtag What Makes You Famous and find it everywhere. Time for a little What Makes You Smarter. Learn with me right here on the program. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, May 24th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Americans head outdoors for Memorial Day weekend during pandemic. Holiday travelers headed to the beach and elsewhere Saturday for Memorial Day weekend amid the coronavirus pandemic as the country nears 100,000 deaths related to the virus. Some places became so crowded they had to shut down, though there were also some surprise openings of outdoor sites like South Dakota's Mount Rushmore National Memorial, which wasn't expected to allow visitors so soon. In New York, which has achieved a sustained decline in new infections and deaths, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, said he would allow up to 10 people to gather for non-essential activities, provided they adhere to social distancing guidelines. President Trump, meanwhile, took to the golf course for the first time in more than 70 days Saturday. This is according to Reuters and USA Today. Number 2, Hong Kong protests gain momentum again. The largest pro-democracy, anti-government protest since COVID-19 lockdowns began took place Sunday in Hong Kong, just days after China signaled it planned to directly impose national security laws on the city. The demonstrators believe Beijing's plan to bypass Hong Kong's local government and legislature violated the, quote, one country, two systems, end quote, agreement it signed with the United Kingdom during a territorial exchange in 1997. China has denied the move will affect Hong Kong's autonomy, but many of the protesters now believe independence, considered a red line by Beijing, is the only way forward. During the rally, riot police fired tear gas on the crowd for the first time in weeks. This is according to the Wall Street Journal and Reuters. Number 3, Wuhan lab director says coronavirus origin theory is pure fabrication. Wang Yanyi, the director of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, told Chinese state media Sunday the lab was working on 3 live strains of bat coronavirus, but the closest genetic match to the virus that causes COVID-19 and sparked a global health crisis was only 79.8%. Therefore, Wang said, claims by the likes of President Trump and the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, that the virus may have escaped from the facility are, quote, pure fabrication, end quote. As tensions between the U.S. and China have heightened since the outbreak, Trump and Pompeo have leaned into the lab origin theory, but the scientific consensus remains that the pathogen was passed from bats to humans through an intermediary species at a wet market in Wuhan last year, although it's becoming more challenging to pinpoint the animal. This is according to The Guardian and Politico. Number 4, Spain plans to open to foreign tourists in July. Spain is hoping to salvage as much of its tourism industry as possible as it emerges from coronavirus lockdown. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Saturday that the country will reopen to overseas visitors starting July 2nd. He encouraged people to begin planning their vacations, though he said safety measures will be in place to protect both tourists and Spanish residents from infection. Quote, we will guarantee that tourists will not run any risks, nor will they bring any risk to our country, end quote, he said. The Prime Minister also gave Spain's top professional soccer league, known as La Liga, permission to return to play June 8th. There have been 235,290 confirmed coronavirus cases and 28,678 COVID-19 deaths in Spain, but the daily infection and fatality rates have steadily declined since the country went into a strict lockdown in March. This is according to The Guardian and ESPN. Number 5. Taliban announces 3-day EID ceasefire. The Taliban announced a 3-day ceasefire with the Afghan government that will take effect when the Muslim festival of Eid al-Fitr begins Sunday. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and his country's soldiers would respect the truce. The two sides are mired in complicated negotiations to end their decades-long conflict, but the direct talks have been delayed by a dispute over prisoner exchanges and an increase in fighting. There's hope that ceasefire, only the third since the conflict began, could lead to a longer-term reduction in violence. But the previous truces were unsuccessful in that regard. A similar ceasefire took place during Eid celebrations in 2018, and Taliban fighters and Afghan security forces were seen hugging each other and posing for selfies. But the Taliban has ordered their members not to enter government territory this time. This is according to Al Jazeera and the BBC. Number 6. Biden wins Hawaii primary. Former Vice President Joe Biden won Hawaii's Democratic presidential primary Saturday, taking 63% of the vote. Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, earned the remaining 37%. Sanders dropped out of the race in April, but has remained on primary ballots in an effort to keep picking up delegates and gaining more influence over the party's policy platform going forward. After Hawaii, Biden has a total of 1,566 delegates, which puts him on pace to cross the threshold needed to secure the nomination by June. Hawaii's primary, which was delayed for weeks because of the coronavirus pandemic, was held entirely by mail. This is according to The Hill and Honolulu Star Advisor. Number 7. Report. Warren plans to host high-dollar fundraiser for Biden. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat, Massachusetts, has agreed to host a gathering of big money donors for the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, the New York Times reports. The event, which will take place online because of the coronavirus pandemic, is scheduled for June 15th. 3 people with knowledge of the plans told the Times on condition of anonymity. During Warren's own presidential campaign, which ended shortly after Super Tuesday in March, the senator, a progressive Democrat, vowed not to attend private events or call wealthy potential donors for contributions. Instead, she relied on grassroots donations. But Warren had previously built a network of high-dollar donors during her Senate campaigns and will reportedly turn to that group to aid Biden in his battle against President Trump. This is according to the New York Times. Number 8. Netanyahu trial begins. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trial on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust began Sunday in Jerusalem. It's the first time in the country's history a sitting prime minister has faced criminal trial. Before entering the courthouse, Netanyahu called all 3 indictments, quote, ludicrous, end quote, and said the investigations, quote, were tainted from day one, end quote. Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving leader, was sworn into office for a 4th consecutive term a week ago. After months of stalemate, he and his chief political rivalry, Benny Gantz, the leader of the centrist Blue and White Party, recently reached a power-sharing deal that will keep Netanyahu in power for the next 18 months, even with the trial underway. Gantz will then take over for his own 18-month period. This is according to Haaretz and Axios. Number 9. Appeals Court upholds California's ban on in-person church services. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on Friday rejected a California church's lawsuit claiming Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat, and other state officials violated its First Amendment rights with stay-at-home orders during the coronavirus pandemic. The ruling said no violation occurred because the order, which was made in the interest of public health, quote, does not infringe upon or restrict the practices because of their religious motivation, end quote. Newsom's 4-stage reopening plan considers churches places where there's a high risk of spreading the virus, and therefore they won't open until the 3rd stage. Currently, California is in its 2nd phase. Earlier this week, more than 1,200 pastors in California signed a petition saying they will resume in-person services on May 31st. This is according to the Los Angeles Times and CNN. Number 10, Hall of Fame college basketball coach Eddie Sutton dies at 84. Longtime college basketball coach Eddie Sutton, who learned 2 months ago he would be inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame in August, died Saturday of natural causes, his family said. He was 84. Sutton will enter the Hall of Fame posthumously in August, alongside the late Kobe Bryant. Sutton coached hoops for 50 years at 6 different colleges and 1 high school. Although he enjoyed success at most of his stops, his most prolific run was with Oklahoma State University, who he guided to 2 Final Fours in 1995 and 2004. During his 37 years at the Division I level, which included stints at Creighton University, the University of Arkansas, the University of Kentucky, and, briefly before retiring in 2008, the University of San Francisco. He only had 2 losing seasons. His 806 career victories still ranks in the top 25 of all time. This is according to Fox News and ESPN. That's 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, May 24th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to hear the stories of others or tell your own story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. I hope everyone out there is doing reasonably well. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you're up to. This has been Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.